Ethiopia, tenacity through togetherness. Throughout Ethiopia's rich history, they faced many fierce challenges. However, the citizens have always been able to supersede them. These disputes include violent wars such as the Tigray War between the Ethiopian military and the Tigray tribe, where many on both sides of the war lost their lives. Also, Ethiopia has been battling their arid land, as agriculture has never been able to prosper in the way that the poor country needs it to. According to the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, the United States government-owned website, Ethiopia's economy is dependent on agriculture, which accounts for 40% of the GDP, 80% of exports, and an estimated 75% of the country's workforce. However, just 5% of land is irrigated, and crop yields from small farms are below regional averages. So how have Ethiopians been able to supersede these challenges? Well, through Ethiopians' communal tendencies of adapting together, philosophical togetherness, and positive customs and cultural practices, they've been able to supersede all the negative things that have come their way. An example of adaptation and plasticity in Ethiopia is how Ethiopian farmers are using ancient indigenous methods to combat land degradation, soil erosion, and global warming. As stated before, Ethiopia has a very arid landscape, making farming extremely difficult, also making them susceptible to global warming and climate change as a relatively poor country that is prone to droughts and floods. However, methods are being used in Ethiopia, specifically in the forest, to combat climate change. Yosef Maru, a researcher from the University of Dilla in Ethiopia, in a study on the GDO community, as you can see here, using indigenous forests to combat climate change, found that sacred forest patches have a very promising potential in the support of the combat of climate change through adaptation methods and the conservation and maintenance of some resources and ecosystems. Also, we found that sacred forests are very helpful in carbon sequestration. These methods that the Ethiopian farmers have been using have been passed down and adapted throughout these farming families to keep these family farms alive and thriving. This is very similar to what stated in Julia Watson's TED Talk, part of the stimulus package. Julia Watson studied the Khasi people from northern India and their adaptation methods to the conditions that they live in, which she claimed that they received the most rainfall out of any place on earth in their monsoon season. Because of this rainfall, floods cut off travel between the forest communities, and to adapt, they fused tree roots together to create bridges, as you can see here, and the same ways that they did 1,500 years ago. So this is similar to the Ethiopian farmers' methods, as both of these examples show ways that different groups of people are adapting to the conditions that they live in by using methods that have been passed down communally throughout history. Also, Ethiopians' togetherness and their positive philosophies help them persevere through events that might damage other groups of people. An example of this is the philosophy of Ubuntu, more of a general African philosophy in the sub-Saharan region. It directly translates to I am because of we. This shows the togetherness of Africans as they can take responsibility for each other's wrongdoings and actions in general. Danny W. Nabuder, a political scientist, says, the rejuvenation of the philosophy of Ubuntu is therefore important because it provides Africans a sense of self-identity, self-respect, and achievement. It enables Africans to deal with their problems in a positive manner by drawing on humanistic values that they have inherited and perpetuated throughout their history. Nabuder explains that the re-implementation of Ubuntu in Africa has helped them stay positive throughout the challenges that they face. Furthermore, Africans can find hope by finding and enjoying being themselves through this philosophy of Ubuntu. More specifically in Ethiopia, Ubuntu helps people put aside their differences and come together as one nation. This shows the selflessness of the Ethiopians as they think of themselves as a community rather than individuals, further strengthening their relationships and connections with one another. Likewise, what was previously stated, Nelson Mandela, in his autobiography, part of the stimulus package, says, but the authorities' greatest mistake was keeping us together, for together our determination was reinforced. We supported each other and gained strength from each other. From this, it can be inferred that the prisoners worked together in unity as a team against the forces by filling in for each other's weaknesses, further bonding them as one identity. Many similarities can be seen between Mandela's philosophy and the philosophy of Ubuntu, as they both encourage working together in harmony and facing adversity as a team. So Ethiopians can come together as a singular force rather than isolated, independent individuals connected through spirit and heart through the philosophies, for example, Ubuntu. Ethiopian culture, like parts of the Ethiopian culture like food and dancing, help them as a community to battle and adapt to their negative and unfortunate conditions. Ethiopian culture today, being demonstrated as it was many years ago, is very complex and dense, consisting of many different rituals like celebrations and dances, many different foods, like as you can see here, this is a traditional platter, and uncustomary to outsiders, forms of showing respect, like feeding one another during meals. All these parts of their culture demonstrate their inseparableness, as they weave them together as their traditional clothes are woven together to create intricate patterns and design, expressing positivity, as you can see here. Samuel Mahaffey, with a PhD in relational presence, explains the practice of Gersha. The practice of Gersha, in defying Western conventions around sharing a meal, speaks to a different way of engaging with the food we eat, engaging with each other around shared meals. It is instructive of a different way of being in a relationship. It enhances the notion of relational presence as a way of bringing the sacred into ordinary life, and ceremony as a rich exemplifier of relational being. Gersha is the act of feeding another person that is very common in Ethiopia at all mealtimes. The practice of Gersha has been implemented into Ethiopian daily lives to demonstrate the respect for one another in all relationships. Furthermore, Gersha eliminates stature in communities, as all are one nation that can accept food from another person's hand. This ideology of themselves, Ethiopians have implemented to never think of themselves as better than another person, or at least not good enough to not accept food from them. In conclusion, Ethiopians face a lot of adversity in many different forms. One of these forms is violent battles, like the Ethiopian Italo War, when impoverished Ethiopia was invaded by a fascist Italy, and also their arid land that makes agriculture, which is imperative to Ethiopian economy and overall daily lives, very difficult. However, Ethiopians can prosper in their own ways through communal tendencies of adapting together, philosophical togetherness, and positive customs and cultural practices that have been passed down through generations. Thank you.
Terrific, thanks, Finn. I got 2 questions for you, and then you'll be all done. Okay, for the first one, did you gather any evidence in preparation for this that you ended up not using? And if so, why didn't you use it?
Well, so as you saw, I didn't use my counterclaim, which was that although Ethiopians aren't statistically a happy country, their faith keeps them content. I didn't use that because I thought my evidence that I showed here was enough, and also that I didn't have time to incorporate into my presentation.
Right. Awesome. And then as a follow-up question, how is your conclusion about Ethiopia in conversation with other research sources you examined? Are there other sources that you found that found the same conclusion about Ethiopia?
Yeah, so there were sources that partly agreed with this conclusion, not fully, because I took information from sources to incorporate into my conclusion and work them together.